All right, today we're going to talk about something that's a huge part of our daily lives, but most of the time we don't even notice it: the humble contract. Now, I know that word sounds super formal, maybe even a little scary, but it's something you deal with all the time, whether you realize it or not. So let me ask you a question. Just think about your day so far. Did you sign any big, important-looking paperwork? Shake hands on some massive business deal? Do you think you entered into a legally binding contract today? The answer is probably going to surprise you. Yeah, the answer is almost definitely yes. You probably did. That super simple transaction, grabbing your morning coffee, buying some groceries, or even hiring a rideshare. All of that is powered by the basic principles of contract law. So let's break down what that actually means. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the absolute basics of making an agreement. Then we'll figure out when an agreement becomes a real legal contract. We'll run through the official checklist, see what happens when deals go south, and finally, we'll look at the legal power this knowledge gives you in your everyday life. All right, first things first, let's build an agreement from the ground up. Forget all the complicated legal documents for a second. At its heart, any deal, whether it's huge or tiny, really only has three simple ingredients. So, everything kicks off with an offer. Now, in legal terms, an offer is just one person showing they're willing to do something in exchange for someone else saying yes. So when you walk up to the counter and say, "I'll take one large latte, please," boom, you've just made a legal offer. And of course, for every offer, you need an acceptance. This is the yes to your deal. When the barista replies, "Coming right up," well, they've just officially accepted your proposal. Simple as that. The first connection has been made. And now for the final piece, and this one is absolutely crucial. It's called consideration. This is what makes it a two-way street. It's the price you pay for what they promise. The fancy Latin term for this is quid pro quo, which literally just means something for something. In our coffee shop, it's your money in exchange for their coffee. So you can kind of see how this all stacks up, right? You take an offer, you add an acceptance, and what you get is a promise. Then you add that all-important consideration, that's something for something, and now you officially have what the law calls an agreement. Okay, so we've built an agreement, but does that automatically mean we have a legally binding contract? Not quite. There's another pretty big test it has to pass. And this right here is one of the most fundamental rules in all of contract law. Just because you've agreed on something doesn't automatically make it a contract. So what's the missing ingredient that turns a simple agreement into something a court will actually enforce? This slide just lays it out perfectly. It really all boils down to one single thing: the intention to create a legal relationship. Look, promising a friend you'll meet them for a movie, that's a social agreement. The law isn't going to get involved if you're a no-show. A contract, on the other hand, is an agreement where both of you fully intend for it to be enforceable by law. All right, so now we get to the real heart of it. How does a simple agreement pass that test and become a valid, legally enforceable contract? Well, guess what? There's an official checklist for that. So what's the magic formula, straight from the law itself? Basically, an agreement becomes a contract when it's made with the free consent of people who are actually allowed to make a contract for a lawful reason and with lawful consideration. Seems like a mouthful, but it's pretty logical when you break it down. So here's the whole shebang. A valid contract has to tick every single one of these boxes. We've already talked about offer and acceptance, that legal intention and consideration. But let's zoom in on a couple of these other really important ones: free consent and who is competent to contract. Free consent is, well, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It means everybody has to be on the same page, and they have to be there willingly. The legal world has a fancy term for this: consensus ad idem, which just means a meeting of the minds. You both have to agree on the same thing in the same way, with no one twisting your arm. And just to be super clear, consent is not considered free if it's the result of any of these things. Coercion, for example, that's a direct threat. If someone forces you to sign something, well, you didn't really consent, did you? The same goes for fraud or being seriously misled. If your yes wasn't given freely, that contract is on some very shaky ground. The law is also pretty specific about who is competent or able to make a contract. Generally, you have to be of legal age, you have to be of sound mind, and you can't be disqualified for some other legal reason. And this isn't just a technicality. It's there to protect people who might be vulnerable from getting locked into deals they don't fully understand. Okay, so what happens when an agreement doesn't tick all those boxes? When things fall apart? Well, it turns out not all broken agreements are created equal. let's look at what can go wrong. And this is a really key distinction. A void contract is basically dead on arrival. It can't be enforced, period, often because its purpose was illegal from the start. A voidable contract, though, is a bit different. It's a valid contract, but one person has the option to cancel it. Think back to that coercion example. If you were forced into a deal, you have the power to void it, but the other side doesn't. This quote really sums it up nicely. All illegal agreements are automatically void, but not all void agreements are illegal. For example, an agreement to commit a crime, that's both illegal and void. But an agreement made with, say, a minor, that's typically void, but it's not actually illegal. Illegality is just a more serious reason for a contract to be unenforceable. Okay, let's bring this all the way back to where we started. Now that you've got this basic framework, you can start to see these principles playing out all around you, every single day. See, contract law isn't just for lawyers in stuffy courtrooms. It's basically the operating system for our daily lives. Knowing this stuff is genuinely empowering. It means you understand your rights and your responsibilities every single time you tap your card, click that buy now button, or even just shake on a deal. And I'm going to leave you with this one thought. These legal principles have been around for a very long time, but they are more relevant now than ever before. So the next time you're online and that little box pops up, when you click I agree, you've just made an offer, they've accepted, and your data or your money is the consideration. So think about it. What have you really just promised?